Hello, I'm Daniel Offenberg. I'm the team lead for Group 3, CYBR 7910. This is going to be our capstone presentation video. I'm just going to be covering the introduction portion and talk a little bit about the project itself. And then each phase will be covered by a separate team member. And then I will do a conclusion talking a little bit about some lessons learned during the course and during the capstone. So for the introduction, this just kind of shows who's going to be covering what in the phases, and a little bit of similar to what the agenda was covering. Talking a little bit about the project, we were assigned a company that we were supposed to be cybersecurity professionals, and each phase that we had 3 phases that we went through, developing information security policy, risk assessment. That was the first phase, and the second phase was an attack phase, and then the third phase was what can we do to because after the attack, what can we do to lessen the impact and mitigate the damage that was done. We were given URLs for other groups, and we were supposed to take those URLs and exploit some sort of vulnerability that we could find on them. And in turn, we also found some evidence that showed that we were exploited by another group. And then at the last phase of the capstone, we analyzed the evidence a little bit to see what exactly happened and what we can do. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to phase 1, and then phase 2, and then phase 3. So it should flow pretty nicely through the video there. All the other team members will cover those phases, and then I'll be back with a conclusion after that.
An overall aggregate of regulations, rules, and practices that will regulate how an organization manages, protect, and utilize information. In this policy, we provide summary, definitions, user access, prohibited uses, and violation of policy. Based on this policy, all employees ought to follow specific guidelines for suitable technology and network use. The intent of this policy is to protect infrastructures that processes, transmits, and store customers and employee information. User access. Only authorized users with legitimate obligation will be allowed to access computer, system, electronic data storage platform, server, etc. will be granted access to those platforms based on their rules. Employee who completed network access form will get a user ID and a temporary password. This way, they will have access to technology resources. Prohibited uses. The use of organization technology that is not directly related to implementation in business action is considered abuse. Violation of policy. Whoever has been found violating any part of this policy should be reported immediately to a management team member. An individual found to be guilty of violating this policy will face disciplinary action. However, the policy was sufficient in real-world circumstance. This policy will be longer and more comprehensive and more realistic.
As mentioned previously, this project was broken down into 3 phases: phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. For phase 2, this revolved around we as a group in charge and pretty much protecting the URL site of an e-commerce website. So we as a group basically had to exploit the vulnerabilities and use different methods of testing to identify weaknesses of the URL that was assigned to us. The strategies typically used for this type of cybersecurity practice, in particular, they typically cover over 3 to 5 years of securing assets. We chose, out of all the strategies that we could think of, the comprehensive strategy, which included, methods of vulnerability testing, pen testing, red team attacks, as well as other tests to exploit database research. We also, considered zero-day exploits as well. There are many tools that can be, utilized when it comes to, exploring the vulnerabilities of whether it's a URL or a website or a database, etc. A lot of these programming tools it will really depend on which type of, which programmer you're using, and as well as how critical your site is at any given time. So the tools that we, looked into, some of the programming tools that we looked into as a group were the Wireshark, the Metasploit, the Kali Linux, the Nmap, the Snort, and the Nessus. The 3 tools that we utilized as a group the most were the Arachne, the Nmap, and the Linus. And from these 3, the Arachne and the Nmap were the ones that were able to give us any results. The Linus, unfortunately, could not be installed on the virtual machine, and so we could not get any results with the Linus tool. However, the Arachne, they gave really good results, and the Nmap gave average results overall. Through the Arachne and the Nmap analysis tools, we discovered several vulnerabilities within our systems, and these were mainly common directory issue, HTTP trace method, XSS session token, as well as open ports with Nmap. The operating system information was also given by Nmap, which could be further used to exploit the virtual machine, and we definitely utilized this to that degree. This is the link that provides the overall view of the Arachne scan, which we got 36 issues overall. So about a total of 36 weaknesses that you could say was seen just with this one Arachne scan with that link provided. As mentioned previously, the Arachne scan gave good results. We as a group, we learned a lot with the Arachne scan. In about 20 minutes of scanning and about 20 minutes of program testing, the Arachne scan found the following. I'm not going to go into all of what it found, but a little bit of a breakdown of what it found was the main highlights were the private IP addresses with 23 counts, as well as with the HTTP trace and the common directory, as well as the common administration interface. So when we see vulnerabilities there, we know that it's going to be a further issue, and so it's best as a group to address that as soon as we can, and which we did. So here's the Nmap scan, which obviously it didn't give good results as good and clear and visible results as the Arachne scan, but it still gave us results that we could use going forward. And it also provided, as mentioned before, the operating system, which we could then use that information going forward with our analysis. So here, and here is just the actual, the true breakdown from the Nmap scan, and this is where it shows us that we have open ports on 80, 43, 22, which are all the TCP ports. So we have open ports on TCP ports. Although these are normal open ports, however, if we set forth the 80 is for HTTP, the 20 is SSD, and 443 is secure HTTP or HTTPS. And this concludes the analysis of the phase 2 of the project.
It was broken up into 3 parts: forensics, security review, and mitigation. A basic definition of forensics is the process of analyzing the digital evidence of a computer security incident. Our group was attacked by Group 4. In the image on this slide, you can see the image that was displayed on our SSH terminal. towards the bottom of the image, you can see it says Group 4 now owns you. So right over here, you can see it says Group 4 now owns you. Our actual website did not seem like it had been tampered with. In the real world, we would typically have more evidence than just an image to analyze. System logs would definitely help find a lot of the evidence of attack. During a security review, it is important to uncover network vulnerabilities and weaknesses that have been compromised by a threat. No information security policy is ever 100% perfect. Our ISP had some weaknesses. To ensure an attack is less likely to occur in the future, we would most definitely need to review and update the policies. 3 directory files found on the site that could allow bad actors to gain access to folders that they should not have access to are seen listed here on bullet 3. So those 3 in the parentheses are the directory files that we found. Mitigation is the strategies used to limit the impact of a threat against our data. You can see in the image here by NIST that the standard steps for mitigation are identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. Our first step in mitigation during this class would have been to disconnect all virtual machines/machines from the network. There's not much more mitigation that could be proactively done at this stage. Again, in a real-world scenario, the process would have been a little different. It would have involved loading new software, patching the vulnerability, changing passwords and usernames, enabling two-factor authentication, among many other strategies that could help reduce the likelihood of the attack from recurring.
Okay, we're back. So that should be phase 1, 2, and 3 at this point. And I'm just going to go ahead and cover the conclusion for the video. A lot to unravel, really. We went through a lot in the Capstone. I remembered a lot from other courses. We kind of touched on things like the information security policy, the risk management stuff. That was all covered in previous classes, and kind of all came back to wrap up the degree with the Capstone. And we just had to pull from all that. I mean, even I went back and pulled up some of my old assignments just to kind of polish up on my information security and risk management stuff for this project. And we did a lot with that. We did a lot with the virtual machine, and then we had the attack, and we had to defend against it, but not too much defense. I think in hindsight, we could have done better with that. That aspect. It was quick though. It's a very fast paced class. So when that's happening, it's hard to get that type of stuff is very complex and hard to deal with in the real world. So replicating it in a class setting, I think was difficult for me on my end. And just, and reflecting on being team lead, I learned a lot. I mean, I learned a lot about myself and, delegating tasks to group members and stuff. Utilizing that in the real world, it's going to be kind of difficult, but it's doable. But depends on the company. If it's a small company, that's kind of what we replicated for. That's kind of what we created here at this Capstone. Bigger companies, I think, like you're looking at Amazon, Microsoft, those companies have teams of just thousands of people on their cybersecurity teams. And, that experience would be very unique, would be something totally different from this, but at least we have the fundamentals in order to tackle something like that if we do go on to work for a much bigger company. But a smaller company, definitely, the lesson is there, with everything organic and Aqaba and the website and everything, that happened. So it was an extremely rewarding experience for me, and I hope for everyone else.